Hello Intertubers and welcome to the second Geeky interlude. This one's all about all the nasty things that will happen to you as an effect of high G-forces. Like you'll get from the ships in Frontier. So we're going to start from the bottom. First activity is living on Earth. That's something we all do. We do it for our whole lives and probably won't surprise anybody that the effect of this is nothing. This is completely normal and natural to us. So we'll go up a bit. Next is roller coaster. There's a bit of variation on this, but 3G for 10 seconds is reasonable. And the effect of this one, well, it's fun, no harmful effects, and we do this to ourselves for fun. And of course, we also drink alcohol, which is a poison for fun, and we eat capsaicin, which is a chemical that artificially stimulates pain receptors for fun. So humans are a bit weird. But this doesn't seem to have any harmful effects. But some roller coasters have spikes of higher G, and now we start to see some problems. Still, most people just have fun, but some people are fainting now. And that's a bit of cause for concern, because fainting means that the heart is not able to pump enough blood to the brain. And anything that can cause fainting in small doses can probably cause death in large doses. Although fainting for 2.5 seconds, probably nothing to worry about. I mean, this roller coaster hasn't killed anyone yet, and I don't think it will. So let's crank up the G-force and see what happens. First of all, the Lion. This is the slowest real ship in Frontier. It's also the worst ship in the game for many reasons that go beyond merely being slow, so don't buy one. But if you do, this ship, when it travels to a planet, will accelerate at 5G for about 2 days. Problem here is that G tolerance for normal people is about 4 to 6 Gs. After that, they start passing out. That's why the roller coasters are dropping a few people, because they're reaching 5 Gs. I'd also be concerned about the heart. Your heart can certainly work 5 times as hard as normal for a few seconds. Can it work 5 times as hard as normal for 2 days? Probably not. So, next we're back to reality. Formula 1 is probably the highest G that anyone's going to get on the ground. Now, I have to say, Formula 1 drivers are not normal people. They're very strong and athletic, despite having a job that's basically all about sitting down. And the reason is these G-forces. Maximum G has, I think, crept up over recent years. It's currently around 6.5 G. And this is starting to generate a few problems, mostly in the neck. So one good thing you might say about these G-forces, they're mostly horizontal. That means a horizontal force isn't going to impair the heart's ability to pump blood up to the brain, but it is going to put a lot of strain on the neck. Imagine if your head suddenly weighed 6.5 times what it should, and that weight was pointed in a horizontal direction. On top of that, a 1 kilogram helmet adds an extra sideways force equivalent to the weight of 6.5 kilograms. So, Formula 1 drivers need really strong necks, among other things. And we actually have an interesting case recently of Kevin Magnussen, who was a substitute driver. The problem was one of the drivers was Russian, and Russia invaded Ukraine, so in retaliation we fired their Formula 1 drivers, which I'm sure they cared about, and brought in a substitute. There's a slight problem here, which is it's really hard to get a substitute Formula 1 driver because the only people able to survive this kind of abuse are existing Formula 1 drivers. And his complaint immediately, I think this was after his first test drive, was that his neck strength was nowhere. So I hope it will come back soon. Come back because he was a Formula 1 driver before. You can certainly work up to it, developing neck strength in the gym, but to become a substitute driver at short notice, it's really hard. I think they're talking about we put these cups on the side. I've seen some kind of brace attached to his back and the back of his head, just to try to get some of the force off his neck. Anyway, unfortunately, he had some kind of problem, saying, he says, my neck just broke in Q3, I couldn't drive anymore. Probably not a literal break of a vertebrae, but and something in his neck just wasn't strong enough. Probably a muscle just decided it couldn't take this abuse and was pulled. Something like that. So, just an example. Here is what a typical Formula One driver's neck looks like. It's fatter than his head because of all the muscle build-up in there. So that does tell us something. You can build up strength of muscles, at least, either in the gym or by being just subjected to these forces. Heart can become stronger, neck muscles can become stronger up to a point. Next up, fighter plane. Now again, fighter pilots are not normal people. They are in peak athletic condition, with very strong hearts. They're wearing G-suits, which are designed to squeeze the body to prevent all the blood from draining out of their heads. They have special training. It's mostly about contracting muscles in the chest, again, to prevent blood coming out of the head. So they can stay conscious under this kind of abuse. But they do gain a number of problems. One of the most interesting being the so-called Geesels. This is a measles-like condition which looks like this, and I think this picture is from someone who doesn't normally have freckles, has clear skin. The problem is that G-forces act on the blood. The blood will, if for example the plane goes through an upward turn, the blood will try to go down to the bottom parts of the body. It tends to pool in the extremities. It fills up the capillaries, and then the capillaries just burst, causing the pilots to essentially bleed internally into their own skin and organs, which is no fun at all. And what's significant here is that this is some kind of structural failure rather than a functional failure. Like, it's possible to make your heart stronger, it's possible to make your neck stronger. I'm not sure if it's possible to make your internal tubes stronger. So this is something that people are just going to have to live with at high Gs. Next up, something very, very silly, the euthanasia coaster. This is a concept piece that's never been built, but the idea is sound. 10G for a minute should break anyone who's not a fighter pilot. Like, if the heart is unlikely to be able to supply the brain with oxygen for that long, if the brain is deprived of oxygen for a minute, then even the parts of it that tell the heart to beat and the lungs to breathe are going to fail. So at the end of this ride, you'll have no brain activity, no pulse, no breathing, and not enough oxygen in the blood for the brain to start working again. So I'm going to call the effect of this one death. That's certainly the intent, although possibly you could be resuscitated. The heart could be restarted. The question is, how much brain damage have you suffered, and how much of you is left? So I think already we can see that 10G for 60 seconds is a serious problem. Next up, ejector seat. Ejector seat's typically 18G, but only for a very small amount of time. The idea, an ejector seat, it has to throw the pilot out of the plane as quickly as possible. The effects of this are not fun. Broken legs are bad, broken spine is very bad. Then you've got permanent loss of height due to the spine being crushed. That doesn't come back. And then lost shoes. Yeah, shoes being pulled off from the acceleration alone. That's not exactly a serious medical problem, but it does show just how strong these forces are. If something can pull your shoes off, imagine the same force being applied to your internal organs. So now we're getting to the really, really silly stuff. Ships from Frontier. Starting with the Eagle Mark 1, 25G for 1 day. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of problems here. First of all, I'd be worried about some kind of internal bleed out. 9G for about 10 seconds is enough to cause the Geezels, which are, burst capillaries and internal bleeding essentially into your own organs. Imagine suffering that for a day at more than twice the G-force as well. You might actually bleed out without a drop of blood leaving your body. Then of course we have the normal thing of the brain failing, heart stopping, and eventual death from lack of oxygen. Like, you're not going to survive this. You're just not. And just to rub it in, fastest ship in Frontier actually has a 30 Gs of acceleration. So at this point I'm starting to wonder, how well attached are your organs to the abdominal cavity? Like, are those ligaments and tendons and things, are they 30 times stronger than normal? Sorry, are they 30 times stronger than they need to be? I don't think so. So there's a lot of really, really nasty things that are going to happen to you. Now, the manual does try to handwave around this. Apparently we have a chair made out of silastoplaston, a material that stays dry at all times. Well, I'm glad it stays dry at all times, because I don't think most people's bladders could handle 25 Gs. Perhaps the reasonable part of this is it feels like you are immersed in water. Now, being immersed in a medium that is as dense as yourself, it's going to help a little bit. But I don't think it's really going to solve any of these problems. And then it just says it protects you from dangerously high acceleration forces. How does it protect you? Those forces are still going to be applied to you. They're still going to be applied to you through the skin, which means, because that's the only surface part we've got, which means you're still going to get messed up inside. And there's another problem which the manual doesn't even try to handwave. Just in case anyone forgets, we can trade slaves. We can trade live animals. How does that work? I mean, a horse in particular would be, I think, have incredibly low G tolerance, because horses are kind of notorious for having intestines that are not well attached to their abdominal walls, and if they come loose, then the horse dies a very slow and painful death. But we're not quite done yet. Human beings have survived G-forces in excess of 30 G, but not for a day. So first up is John Stapp, who volunteered to ride the rocket sled. A rocket sled is essentially a rocket-powered vehicle on rails. It was accelerated up to insane speeds with the rocket, and then braked as hard as possible. It's actually the braking that generated the crazy amounts of G. So what we have here is a 25 G at least for 1 second, with the peak being 46 G, which is crazy. Nothing in Frontier is that fast except the missiles, which aren't manned. The effect of this is not good. He broke a lot of bones, lost fillings, the same force that pulls your shoes off at 18 G is now pulling fillings out of people's teeth. And the nastiest side effect here is temporary blindness due to retinal bleeding. So this is essentially the same as Geezels, except the capillaries that are bursting are now inside the man's eyeballs, on top of everything else. So blood vessels in the eyes burst, he bleeds internally into his own eyeballs, and consequently can't see anything for a while. Apparently the human body can actually clean this crap up, because this was temporary, which I'm sure was a very pleasant surprise the first time it happened to anybody, because they didn't know anything when they were doing these experiments. And the really crazy thing is, John Stapp volunteered for this more than once. Like, it takes a very special kind of person to go on a ride that breaks his bones and rips his fillings out and blinds him and think, oh, that was awesome, I want to do that again. Yeah, absolute mad lad. The reason for these experiments was essentially to develop seats and safety harnesses that would let people survive crashes. So these experiments saved lives and prevented injuries. And I'm sure they prevented far more injuries than they caused, but still, mad respect to John Stapp for volunteering for this. So next up, well, since that was the maximum G-force, anything faster must be an accident. And we're back to Formula 1 again. There have been a few crashes, and these figures are fairly typical. Insane amounts of G for tiny amounts of time. And the effect's actually not that bad. Like, he broke bones, like most of them. But ultimately made a full recovery or full enough to come back to racing. I mean, the problem I have with this is that when you're dealing with like 0.03 seconds, then it seems that we're talking about impulse now, not acceleration. So, in conclusion, first of all, every ship in Frontier would kill you. That's bad. Even the Lion, I think 5G for 10 days, I don't think you survive that. So, then the question is, if we had hyperspace, that worked the same way it does in Frontier, and if we had ships that were capable of firing their thrusters for days on end without running out of fuel, then could we still have this kind of spacefaring trading civilization? And I think we could. If you remember from last time, the practical time formula, time in days as a function of distance and acceleration. Well, if we pick the standard distance of 10 AU and let both accelerations be just 1G, then we're going to get a value, which is actually 9 days. So if a ship limited itself to only 1G of acceleration, then it could still get from a hyperspace exit point to the destination planet, and it would only take about 4 to 5 times as long as normal. So yeah, you actually could. This doesn't. The G problem isn't actually fatal, and maybe it's just a convenience that Frontier lets us fly faster than we would normally be able to without dying horribly. So yeah, well, I hope that was fun, or at least informative or something. And I will try to keep my nerd rage over the 25 Gs of acceleration to a minimum from now on. I've said my piece, and the next episode of How to Play Frontier will be up soon, so see ya.